All right, good evening, Wildcats. It is 7:30 p.m., and it is Monday, August 17th, 2020. We have some instructions for all our YouTube viewers on the screen, but at this time, I'm going to remind everyone that if you are watching via YouTube Live, there are two ways to turn up your volume, one in the YouTube app and one on your computer. Please make sure both of those are turned up. I do want to do a sound check at this time. Are all of our viewers out there able to hear me? Is everything loud and clear in Wildcat land? I want to tell all of our viewers tonight of this virtual information meeting that I do have some help tonight. We do have our assistant principals of Cagle High School. They are sitting over to my right, and tonight, as you ask questions, they are going to help us take the information from our chat feed and get it to where we can get those questions answered for all of our parents and all of our stakeholders. But as we start tonight, ladies and gentlemen, this back-to-school meeting, I do want to go over some expectations. There's a good chance that we could have lots of these meetings virtually, and in this format, it's the first time that I've ever hosted an event on YouTube Live, but I just want to remember everyone get to their computers, try to log in about 5 minutes before start time. This is going to have some one-way information to me, to you, but your participation is encouraged, and I want you to use the chat feature to ask questions. Our assistant principals are watching those chat features. They are writing down your questions. But I do want to remind you, though, with those questions, we're going to have some scheduled times. I'm going to make some pauses, some stops to answer your questions and answers. So I know that a lot of you have questions out there right now, but hold some of those, and we will get to them at the end of each of the sections. So hold those questions. You don't need to start asking questions now. See if I get to those. See if they get answered. But when we do take pause, that's going to be the appropriate time to ask those questions. But we're doing this to keep the meeting organized and efficient. We want to keep our questions organized by topic and to stay focused. And then again, we will have a question and answer session at the end. If you have a question, though, that you don't want to share with the group through the chat in this presentation, I'd like you to just email those questions to me. My email address is on your screen, and I'm going to try to get to those within 24 hours tonight. So, for instance, if you have a question about your student's specific schedule or some of those things, just email me. Also, as we go through the presentation, I'm going to give you some contact information for some other members of our campus and with their jobs. For instance, with registration, I'll give you the contact number or information for our registrar. But our assistant principals are to my right. They have a house microphone when we get to those questions. Hopefully, you may not see them on screen, but hopefully you'll hear those questions so that all of the viewers can hear both our questions and our answers. I want to tell everybody, if you look at this presentation, it's about 110 slides long. I have a lot of information to cover, and I'm going to say this. We plan on meeting with you again. I'm going to get through as much information tonight, but I do need to make an admission to all of our parents and all of the students. I don't think that everything that you need to know about this year I can cover in an hour and a half. That's why I did want to make some of our printed material, this presentation, available. I know that I have parents out there that cannot attend this session, but we're going to do the best we can. I'm going to move as fast as we can. One thing that right now I need to tell you is that TEA and some of its guidance is changing. The district is still working on some of their plans. If you get to a question that I actually don't know the answer to, I will try to get through that question. Our APs will take notes of that, and I'll try to get the answers in our future communications. But with that said, I know that at Cagle High School we have 11 languages spoken in our families. In our home language survey, it shows that we have 11 languages other than English spoken out in Wildcat land. I do want to say that Miss Gloria Martinez-Resendez, Miss Resendez, who taught Spanish last year, she is actually an assistant principal intern this year. She's going to do this same presentation. I know that she's at home watching now, and she's also working on translating this presentation into Spanish. She'll be presenting on Thursday night for our Spanish speakers. But with that said, students, if you're watching out there and your parents do not speak English, please share some of this information with you. I want to remind everyone that there are translation applications on the website like Google Translate. So I encourage our students to help those parents who speak English or languages other than English and Spanish. All right. I'm going to go over an overview of tonight's meeting and the main topics that I'm going to cover. There's a lot of things I said that you're going to need to know for back to school. There's a lot of things I'm not going to have time to cover tonight. So I want to go over what we are going to cover and what we're not going to cover. But before we do that, before we get to that overview, this is a slide that's not in your presentation packet. I know that with our students, some of them are watching, and if I don't hurry up and get to some of the big ideas of this meeting, I'm going to lose them. So I want to first of all go over some big ideas, the big four things that you need to know before I get into any depth of this presentation. The first thing you need to know is that remote learning is not going to look anything like it did last spring. This fall, there's a new model set out by the state. Last year, I say that we were in crisis recovery mode in the state of Texas, across the nation, and in our schools. School is going to be much more rigorous. Your attendance is actually going to be based on, this is number 2, your attendance is going to be based upon your engagement, your progress, and your production if you are a remote learner at home. And then number 3, the students, you need to know that this fall you're going to have deadlines. You're going to have homework assignments. You can expect to go back to daily lessons in the classroom. You're going to have deadlines. And number 4 there, grades will be taken. Grades will count. Per TEA guidance for schools that adopt asynchronous plans like Kennedale ISD is doing, per TEA, school grading policies for remote student work must be consistent with those before COVID-19 for on-campus assignments. So students, you need to know those 4 big ideas. School's going to look a lot differently this fall. And before I get to that overview, I want to tell all of our families out there that the Kennedale ISD nutrition team is going to have breakfast and lunch service for all of our learners. For the first 4 weeks of school, we will discuss. We are going to have a 4-week period where we have at-home person, remote learning only. We are actually going to have lunch service for any of our students who want to pick up some breakfast or lunch combo meals at the high school. I've got the pickup area there. That's on the north side of the school towards the PAC, but those are going to be available from 10:30 to 12. I was told that the breakfast meals were going to be shelf-ready meals and the lunch meals are going to be hot. And so I appreciate our nutrition team, first of all, for providing those hot lunch meals. I know some other districts that have started the same process as schools have already started. Some of them are serving cold lunches. Some of them are serving lunches that kids get by the week and that they have to cook at home. I want to thank our nutrition team and our district leaders for providing that for our students. But students, come get a hot lunch, come get a breakfast if you need it. But let's go over what we're going to focus on tonight. I am going to do a general focus over our new calendar, our bell schedule, the study hall, but I went through a lot of that in a pre-recorded video that I did for parents or presentation. That's on this screen that you have here, this presentation you should have in your email. If you click that link, you can watch to learn more about those. But right now, I want to shift to answer some questions that our parents have about what is school going to look like. The biggest question that our parents have is, okay, I've got some choices out there. Kennedale ISD today sent out the commitment form that we are going to fill out this week, and our parents still need an understanding of what is it going to look like if I actually send my kids to school, or what is it going to look like if I keep them home. Again, I'm not going to be able to answer all of those questions tonight, but we're going to answer as many as we can. We're going to do a comparison of some key terms like asynchronous and synchronous learning. We're going to look at what it means to be remote or what it means to be in person. And then we're going to look at some of the different options you have. One of the biggest things that we're not going to talk about tonight in depth is a detailed examination of our campus procedural and safety protocols. We will do another presentation. Tentatively, we're going to set that for next Monday night, and I'm going to get my assistant principals or the assistant principals to help us with that. But with that, we're going to go into our safety procedures and what school's going to look like for in-person learners. But right now, I'm going to hit some of those things tonight, but we're not going to do broad strokes in that tonight because I need to really cover some other material. But parents, I'm going to show you some examples of some things that we've been planning. We've been thinking about ways to social distance kids in lines, what our lunches are going to look like, what our breakfast is going to look like, what our pickup's going to look like before school. So we've put a lot of thought and work into those things, and we will get you this information. I hope this week we send you a guide so that you can start reading over, and then we cover some of those things next Monday night. Some of the information that you and questions you have might be specific to campuses or to campus programs, to classes, to organizations. I'm going to say this. I'm not here tonight to talk about specific organizations or specific programs like our athletic program or our band program. If you have specific questions about what things look like in those programs, please contact the sponsors. And then if you have questions about specific courses on your child's schedule, please contact the teacher. But here we go. I want to remind all students, we have some new to district students, some students who've never been Wildcats in this year, and we have some returning students. But students, no matter what choice you make this year, whether you're new or old, whether you are going to learn remotely this year or in person, you got to register. I've got some the registration link. The one difference from this year from past years, it's all online this year. We do have some nights down at the bottom. Like tonight, we actually had some people over at the cafeteria getting assistance from KHS and KISD staff members to get registered. But if you need some assistance, I've got some contact information there. And again, you can contact Ms. Resendez if you speak Spanish. Also with our students, they are able to access at this time their student schedules. They have changed the name of our parent portal. It is now called the Ascender Parent Portal. But teachers and parents, one thing I'll say is this is the parent portal. You have to use your login to get in. We've had some students that have tried to log in, but they need to use your login to get in. But students can access their schedules, and that's very important. If you're out there tonight, I do want you to go ahead and access your student schedules and have it ready for in just a few minutes. We do have some campus events that I'd like to announce. The Kennedale leadership, the students in our leadership, student councils and other organizations, they're going to have what we call Fish Camp. This is a orientation session for our incoming freshmen. I've got 2 different sessions. That's going to be done virtually. We usually do that at the high school, but those are your dates. That is your times. I am going to say it is going to be kind of on a first-come, first-served basis. Anytime we have a Zoom meeting, we can only hold about 100. If the student council and the student leadership do get where they need to have a 3rd meeting, they will set up a 3rd session. But that is for Fish Camp, but we also want to provide information for our transfers. Those students who have come to Kennedale ISD for the first time. We are going to have our transfer orientation on Tuesday, August 25th. That's the day before school, and we're going to cover a lot of information to get them started. A lot of them may not be familiar with Google Classroom. A lot of them may not be familiar with the way things that are going, or way things are in Kennedale ISD, where buildings are located. We're going to help them get oriented on the 25th. If you have any question about either of those, contact Ms. Ramirez, our grades 11 and 12 counselor. For all of our returning students, we do have some new teachers on campus. We actually have 18 new teachers. This was an odd year of hiring. We have a lot of new teachers, but we retained a lot of our other staff. In fact, we retained all of our professional, office, nutrition, custodial, and paraprofessional staff except for one of our classroom paraprofessionals. And so it was a good year as far as retaining those, but we do welcome 18 new teachers. There's some names on the list that are brand new that come to us from other districts. So if you see them on your schedule, you'll know what they do. I've got some teachers on there. You can also look at what if they coach. For instance, Miss Allen is going to help with our cheer program. But you see some names on there that might be familiar Wildcats. We do have Mr. Hammonds and Mr. Hullett who've come up from our junior high, and then we welcome back Kenneth Jowers. I'm going to say he took a study abroad to a different district last year, but he is coming back to be a Wildcat in 2020-21. But this is the rest of the list of those new teachers. Looking at that list, let's see. We welcome Miss Martin. This will be her first year teaching ever. And so welcome Miss Martin. And also you'll see Miss Osborne is going to come up and help also with our CTE education and training program and be the cheerleading coach. By the way, I do want to point out we do have 18 new teachers, but I do want to say that I'm very proud that the Kennedale ISD received a federal principal residency grant, and 3 of our staff members out of that 18 became new principal interns in the district, including Miss Resendez, who taught Spanish, Miss Jenkins, and Miss Littleton. So we wish them the best of luck. But we do have some new roles, including Miss Resendez. Our Miss Jackson is going to move over to PE and take over the head girls basketball coaching responsibility. So we wish Miss Jackson good luck. Mr. Creasy is going to be teaching computer science. Mr. Lucero's moved from math to kinesiology. Wingfield's back in business, and Mr. Funderburk is no longer coaching. He's got his hands full with a set of twins. He's going to be mathematics teachers only. And then we've got some movement in the building. We're going to be looking at our campus maps this week. One of the big moves that we have all started in, when we started planning for this year, we needed more space. And we'll go over that space a little bit, but we did some movement. Our choir has traditionally been in what we call the old band hall. When our main campus was built, we had a band hall built in the main building. Then this facility that I'm speaking in, the Performing Arts Center, the PAC, it was built to house the band, and that old band room became choir. We are actually opening up that room. Maintenance is laying new floor. They're actually putting a locker room in one of the big storage rooms, and we're going to make that facility called the Multi-Purpose Center, or the MPR, and it's going to house our drill team, our cheerleaders, robotics, archery, but it is also going to serve us as a large space this year, as we're going to look for more places to have classrooms, to have lunches, because one thing that we know is that we needed to provide more space to socially distanced kids to keep them safe. But we had some big movements. I will say the other thing, if you know Mr. Maddox, Mr. Lee, campus security, they've moved upstairs and give us some presents. But we've got new roles, new offices, a lot of movement there. One of the other things that's going to be different for all the parents, when I look at that list, is that Miss Shue, and that should not say Miss Sure, but Miss Shue is going to move. She's going to move out of what we call the window right when you walk in. She's moved into a new office just outside the library. We're going to create an actual attendance office separate than that window. But for all of our new parents out there, new students that are out there, freshmen, a lot of you have never been on campus. You've ended your year off campus and learning remotely. So I want to look at our campus for a little bit. But when I came to campus at this high school, when I moved from the junior high, I said I didn't know what a lot of things mean. People were using terms like these. So I want you to look at these terms at home, and you can join in the chat if you want, but see if you know what these means. The MPR, I kind of gave that one away. That's our new multi-purpose room, but what about the others? See what you know and don't know as I go through here. But right now, this is an aerial view of our campus. I am standing in the PAC, what we call the PAC. It's the Performing Arts Center. This is where our band students will go. This is where theater will have large performances, and this is where we often do large meetings. When this high school was originally built, right in the middle of the screen, we have a field house that was here when they first built the school. We kind of refer to that sometimes as the old field house. It's not very old, but I will say there's also a new field house. Around the football stadium, they built at one point an indoor practice facility. We have some very nice facilities at this high school, and as a part of that practice facility, right behind the stadium, you see how it wraps around the stadium, there are new locker room facilities there, so you might call that the new field house. New field house in the indoor houses our football team, and it houses football, and Mr. Browning, help me out, anybody else? The indoor field house, does it just house football, or?
The indoor is football, and it's also where cheerleaders used to practice, and sometimes track can be based on weather.
Okay. And then we have the older field house, or what we say the original field house, that houses, and I want to get this right, softball, baseball, and soccer. Is that correct? And then the other locker rooms will be in the main building, including the new locker rooms and the multi-purpose room. One of the other campus facilities that you'll notice is where they hold board meetings. It's called the Media Center. It's just behind the football field. Sometimes I say it's the hardest building to find on campus, but it is an auditorium-style classroom. But when you get into our main building, our new students and our old students, I want you to know that a lot of times we refer to our hallways by number. Our hallways are numbered, and they are usually grouped by department. So for instance, the 100 hall has math, the 400 hall has foreign language and science, and then the 800 hall has social studies, some of our special ed classrooms, and CTE. But this is the first floor. We do have a second floor, and I'm going to go back to that screen, but we do have a second floor, a 900 hall on the second floor that has our CTE department. And I just messed my presentation up. What did I do? Play from... There we go. Sorry, parents at home. Okay, but I want to go back to this picture of our first floor. We have our numbered hallways. We have things grouped, but in the middle of the building, you'll see our cafeteria. But I want to look in blue. Those are three big spaces that we have planned out, and we are going to use this school year. We know at some point this school year, we're going to have students learning from home and learning on campus. But I want you to be familiar with the location of the MPR, the multipurpose room, or the old original auditorium where they used to have plays and big meetings. We have an auditorium, and we also have the B gym. We have 3 gyms on campus, and the middle one is called the B gym. But those are big spaces that we're going to use in the mornings for our study halls, and we're going to use those also, the multipurpose room and the B gym. Those 2 areas are going to be our backup eating areas. We know that when we social distance kids in the cafeteria at 6 feet apart, we can't fit all of our kids that have lunch in there. So we're going to make best use of all of our spaces, like the multipurpose room and the B gym. So this is one way, parents, that I want you to know that we are thinking towards all of these safety protocols, which we'll go over more later next week. I sent out I guess I'm going to back up here. I've got a natural pause here, but does anybody have questions about anything that I've covered so far? Okay. Mr. Browning, go ahead.
First question was, will the other schools be holding similar meetings and how the junior high will operate?
Can you say that again? Will other campuses be holding meetings like this one? Well, I know that one of our elementaries, our principals have been, one of our elementary principals I know hosted a meeting, I think, last week. And so I think, yes, those are going on. I think you're going to be hearing a lot more from campuses starting this week. I can't speak for all of the other campus principals. I know we have one in here tonight who plans to maybe use this facility and host like this. So I expect that you will, but I can't, I would email your principals and see, but I would expect every principal to give and provide information in some manner. It may not look like this, but yes. Well, your mic, they cannot. So Ms. Browning asked her other principals from other campuses the question, going to host meetings like this. And so that was the answer that I gave. All right.
Will there be a parent demo of Google Classroom?
That's a great question. Parents, we know a lot of things. I know that when school comes around, we are absolutely going to provide training for our parents. I discussed with my APs this morning 2 different trainings we need to have. We need to have one for our parents, and we need to have a separate training also for our new students. And that's one of the reasons we want to start with new student orientation. But I do have in this presentation with Google, I'll actually show you some of those dates. I guess I'll talk about them now. We plan to have our new students in orientation within the first week of school, and our parents, we hope to have at least 1 or more sessions available in the first 3 weeks of school. Again, we're probably going to have to do more than one of those and make them available to parents.
Will there be a standardization of Google Classroom post and assignment locations between all of the teachers?
Yes, and I'm going to talk about those. I'll get to those questions. Do we have any more? I will answer Google Classrooms. I'll take 1 or 2 more questions and move on. What else do we have?
What consequences are in place if a student/teacher do not comply with the honor system? Telling school of contact with a person, in-home member who tests positive and infects someone with no symptoms.
Okay, well, one of the things is in this pandemic, the question had to do with what happens if someone doesn't follow our COVID protocols? Well, that is a hard question to answer. The one thing is that one of the messages next week when we talk a lot about safety is we are all going to have to be on the honor system. I told our staff when we started staff in service, I said, one of the hardest things as principal, as leader of the school, is that I can't assure anyone that we won't have someone that gets sick, someone that is not. I wish I could promise all of our students, all of our teachers, that we're going to go through the year and not have COVID. I don't know if that's the reality, and that makes it hard. But I said, but we can sure try. But when the question there is, what are we going to do? I read an article that a student showed up to a school knowingly having COVID. I hope that parents and students and faculty members in our community, that we are responsible. A big message for all of our parents. I asked parents from a very early meeting with Mr. G. One of the parents said, what are some things that we could do to help? And parents, I've got some answers to those questions. The number one thing that I do for you to help is don't send your kid to school sick. And if possible, bring your kid to school so it limits the number of contacts that we have between students throughout the day. Those two things can help us. But what are we going to do, guys? I know that I'll say this: there are risks for all of us involved here. If we do have someone, we find out that they came to school with COVID, we're going to put them in quarantine, just like our guidelines state. And I hope that answers the question.
Do we have uniforms?
We don't have uniforms. No uniforms. We actually have a normal dress code. All right, I'm going to go and move on. I appreciate those questions. We're going to keep going, but we're going to look. Our district adopted a new calendar. We were supposed to start school on the 12th, and I'm so glad we didn't. The school board gave us 12 days to do professional development. Teachers have been taking advantage of that. But we're going to start school next Wednesday, so just in over a week. We do want to tell you, everyone, I said in a previous presentation, we have new start times. For the first time in a long time, we're going to start after the elementary schools at 7:45. I did list some of the times of the other campuses up there. I talked about in this previous presentation. We hope that this gives an opportunity for some of our older siblings who drive. Again, how can you help us? Maybe take some of their younger siblings to school. But this year, because we pushed back the start date, we were able to push back the start date, and we were able to extend the school. We were able to keep the end date by extending the school day. The state requires 75,600 instructional minutes. We extended our school day, so we were able to move our start date and keep our end date intact. But we do have a new 8-hour school day, and the big question that we had for our task force is, what are we going to do with the extra time? But with that extra time, we had some goals. I talked about these goals again in our previous presentation. We wanted to use this extra time to work on safety, getting kids on campus, getting them to class, working on dismissal, providing more time. We know that we're going to have more time between lunches. We need more time between athletic periods for kids to sanitize hands, but we needed more time. We also needed more time for teachers. Teachers are going to have learners both at home and in the classroom. This has been a very hard planning year because we not only have our students in mind, but our personnel and our faculty in mind. But with this extra 25 minutes, we also wanted to accomplish one academic and one social and emotional piece. We wanted to provide students with some remediation. We know that with COVID, they've been out of school. When we start on the 26th, it will roughly be over 5 months since kids are out of school. They've lost a lot, and we want to help them get some of those academic gains back. And then we also know that there's lots of studies right now that show a lot of students are struggling. They're struggling with some of the social and emotional toll of being in quote-unquote isolation. And so we want to make sure that we provide some social and emotional programs. So with the extra minutes, what we did, one of the things that we did was we did reduce our class length a little bit. We actually made it from 47 minutes to 45. We actually thought that that was important in helping everyone stay on a schedule, but we also have a weekly design. We have a very intentional design for our study hall. It is not just free roam. It is just not all of those things. We're going to do on Mondays, I called that math remediation day. I talked about this in our previous PowerPoint. On Wednesday, we're going to focus on social emotional learning. And then on Fridays, we're going to work with all of those students in reading and writing. Again, if you want to look more at that weekly design, you can check out that earlier presentation that I did. But what else can we do during that first period study hall? We can do a lot of the things that we like to do. We can have restorative meetings with kids. Our counselors can meet with them. We can have pep rallies, assemblies, and all of those good things. But when it boils down to it, I sent each of you in that email for this presentation. This is our regular bell schedule. We have a 9-period day. So the core of our 9-period day is built in 2 through 9. The first period is when we're going to have study hall. But you can look over the different things for that and see the different design that we have in that bell schedule. But the biggest thing is we have 45-minute class periods with the exception of our new lunch period, which is 6th students, not 5th. and we have a 30-minute study hall at the beginning of the day. That study hall is going to be an opportunity for students to get all of those things, get all of that assistance, but during the beginning of the day, it's going to do some other things for us, and I'll show you what that is. One of the things that it's going to do regarding safety is because a lot of our juniors and seniors are going to have late arrival during this time, it's going to create 3 waves of arrival on campus. So parents, if you choose in-person learning, one of the things that you're going to see is that we're going to actually have not all 1,000 kids show up at the same time. We're going to have students arriving in stages, and that's very important because it's going to help us do temperature checks. When every kid arrives on campus, we're going to do health screenings. We have a question here. We're going to do temperature checks, and then we're going to do some other things. But to do all of these things and get them into where they're supposed to be, we need to be able to control numbers at entry points. Kids may be waiting on the next person to take their temperature. We got to be able to social distance them. So a few things that our APs are going to go over next week. We're going to open up. Last year, we kind of had one entry, one exit to the building. We had to change that. We're going to use multiple entry points. We're moving our bus lines back to the north side of the building, if you were here a couple of years ago. But we're doing a lot of things, but first, this bell schedule is going to help us do all of the things we want. So next week, when the APs come to you, they're going to talk about health and campus-specific safety protocols. When kids get on campus, one of the first things we're going to do is take their temperature. Then we're going to ask them to wash their hands. Those are 2 things that have been recommended by the CDC and others that we do. To wash, if half of our students are in person and we have 500 students, that's a lot of hand washing. So we are trying to think outside of the box. Here's just one thing. We're going to take our science lab. They have 9 sinks each. That means that we could wash 2 kids' hands for 20 seconds in each of those science labs. That's 36 hands per minute. We could wash 360 kids' hands if we open up science labs. So this is what APs are been working on. This is what they're going over. Also, not all of them showed up when I imported this image, but you'll see we're also thinking about little things. We're thinking about where kids line up when they go to these hand washing stations, because we got to put social distancing markers in our schools. But I want our parents to know that we're thinking about all those things. When our kids get to school after they wash their hands, we are going to get them housed. Our kids are used to coming on campus and going to the cafeteria. Students, that's going to look totally different. When you get to school now, we got to get you housed into study halls so that we can keep some of the chaos, some of the, we got to keep safety in small numbers so that we can keep you socially distanced. So our students are going to report to our study halls, and I have those locations here on this map. And then one of the things our parents need to know also, I said, we have been thinking about our facilities, our nutrition department at Kennedale High School. If you see our study hall locations up on your screen, the next thing that you need to know is that we are trying to, again, keep kids in the morning from moving about the building. We actually are going to open up more service areas for breakfast. Our main service line, which is normally in the cafeteria, we hope that area is free of kids. But also, for all the students that are in these study halls, we're going to bring mobile food carts to them. But hopefully, all of these things that we're doing give some of our parents some ease, because parents, you're fixing to make one of the hardest decisions you've probably ever made in your child's education. But safety measures, we're going to go into more next week. Today, I want to talk more about the structure of school. Here's the bell schedule that will guide that structure of school. We've got pep rally days. I do have semester exam days on that. We may need to look at that schedule as we look at how this semester is going to go and how we're going to conduct semester exams both at school and at home. I'm going to keep going just a little bit just for sake of time. It's 8:03, and I'm going to just plow through some of this. Parents, I'm going to pause for questions in just a minute, but we're going to look at our master schedule now. I sent you a document called Student Learning Options, and at the back of that, I told you when we started, I wanted you to get your student schedule out on the Ascender parent portal. So maybe in one hand you've got your kid's your schedule. I want you to now find this document, and it's in the attachments that I sent. We're going to look at our master schedule, but in that master schedule, we had to make a lot of changes. I said in the previous presentation, we've added another athletic period. To reduce the number of athletes that were in, simple numbers that were in our last period boys athletics, we knew that we needed to divide things. So it's caused us to make some changes in our master schedule. This year you're going to hear Kennedale High School going from 2 athletic periods to 3. But if you find this document here, you're going to see this is our master schedule. So things that you need to know. With the new bell schedule, one of the things that I said that when we did this, our teachers needed more time, okay? And our teachers traditionally at Kennedale High School have had a conference period. They've had 45, 47 minutes a day of time. Well, we know if they've got kids at home and kids learning in front of them in the classroom, and they're supposed to plan for both, they need more time. We have arranged, you see the orange color is something called a PLC, a professional learning community. We've tried to group teachers together throughout the day. You can see when those are with each other. For instance, up at the top, you see lots of math teachers together. In the next row, you see, the purple area, you see a lot of the English teachers. We've kind of got 2 groups of them in professional learning communities. But oranges are those professional learning communities, and yellow is a teacher's conference period. Guys, you need to know where those are. Parents, if you're wanting to contact a teacher, if your student is learning at home, they need to know when these times are, because these are the times that typically our students are going to have their virtual office hours. And then some things, if you look in the first period column, you'll see a lot of black boxes. Those are the teachers that are going to be study hall. That's study hall. We intentionally want our math, English, and special ed teachers to house those kids early in the morning that choose to come to campus, because again, those are the areas where our kids are going to need the most support. But all of the other teachers that normally don't get PLCs, they have it during study hall. So I'll say this, upperclassmen, I gave you the option to have late arrival during study hall. But I want everyone, as we focus on our next piece of this conversation, to know that study hall time is good for every kid, whether they come to our campus, or every kid, whether they are learning virtually, to start checking in with your teachers, because a lot of that's going to be done online, and it's going to be done using Google Classroom. But this is the rest of the things, so we're going to talk a little bit about things. I said knowing when teachers are available is going to be very important. I need you to know right at the beginning that each of our teachers is going to have to host one formal before or after school tutoring time, and then we are also going to require during that school day that 4 times a week outside of their classes in PLCs and conference periods and others, that our teachers have 4 virtual office hour sessions where they can be reached. But down at the bottom, the last thing is students are looking at our schedules. We're going to get into a piece of the conversation where our students are going to have to make some choices. Our families are going to have to make some choices. But kids, look over this. Have your schedules ready. We'll get there. I want to tell our parents that when we built our master schedule, we did a lot of analysis. And one of the first things we did is we did some analysis on our class size. We needed to make sure. We did some estimates. I started, well, what happens when we start school if every kid shows up? How many kids are going to end up in each class? Then we ran some estimates. If we have this many sections, what is our class load going to be at 100%, and what is it going to be at 25%? But we tried to build our class schedules based on this analysis. And really we knew at the time, at the beginning of summer, we'd have about 25% of our students, just what the studies were showing, about 25% of our students might choose to stay home this year. As we've approached and summer's gone on in Texas, this is actually getting closer to 50%. But with that said, I want our parents and everybody to know we have looked at square footage. I've looked at square footage anywhere from 42 to 48 square feet per classroom. We've given this list to the teachers. This actually helps them get an estimate that with minimal furniture, how many chairs can they fit in a room. But I want our parents to know that we're using this so that we know how many kids we can safely social distance. If we end up with a class when school starts with more desks or more kids than can fit in that classroom safely, we're going to find another area in the building to host that class. So that's the reassurance that I can give our parents, is we've got a lot of thought into all of these things. Students, if you got your schedules out there on the Ascender Parent Portal, check for your lunch. It's during sixth period. You should have A, B, or C. Parents, we tried to balance our lunches. One of the things we look at, and our APs did this, one of the things they look at is they wanted to have a balanced number of kids. We don't know how many kids are going to show up when we finally have in-person learners. So they wanted to balance that number. They also looked at the number of seniors in each lunch, and what they've done is what we've tried to do is get an equal number in there so that when we find out how many kids are actually going to show up, we can fit them into our eating areas. But I think we are. I said earlier we are going to expand our lunch areas to not only include the cafeteria, but outdoor areas and the multipurpose room and Gym B. And we've developed duty schedules to make sure that all of those kids are monitored. So this is some of the planning that we have done with that. I will say this, it's made it difficult. We moved, like I said earlier, to an 8-hour workday. That's hard when you have office employees and things that can only work 7 hours. So we've had to stagger their schedules. Now, parents, that doesn't mean much to you right now. Parents, I do want to tell you this, or to anyone coming up to school. Right now, our schools are still closed to visitors. And I say closed to visitors. If you are going to visit our campus, please don't just show up. Please make an appointment. We are having people on campus this year when school starts until further notice, until things get a little better. We need to reduce as many people as possible on the campuses. Call the number on your screen if you want to set up an appointment. Come to the school and visit us. All right? Let me pause there. Any questions at this point?
Yes, do you want me to cover the Google Classroom now, or some other ones?
Try to cover topics that I've already covered. I'm getting to Google Classroom.
And make sure you repeat the question.
Okay, I'll repeat the question. Here we go.
Okay, will the kids follow their schedules starting next week?
All right, I'm going to get into what school's going to look like. Here's one thing I'll say. The question was, what do kids' schedules look like? The answer to that question that we're going to have is that I'm going to say this. We're going to talk about our model. My recommendation is that our kids, our students, if you hear me, we're going to get back into the business of building school around the bell schedule I showed you. Now, we do have some things called asynchronous learning, but I said it's not going to look like it did in the fall. I'll give you some deadlines and some things to think about. The other thing is that even if you're learning at home, this is not, you cannot just do all of your assignments when you want to or feel like it. You can't wait till the next day if they're due today. You're going to have deadlines, you're going to have due dates, and you are going to be required to join your classes from home or in person on certain days. Next question.
Will every class be on Zoom or have Zoom meetings?
We're actually not going to use Zoom this year, and that's one thing I'll look at. We're going to use something in Google called Google Meets. It's a platform, and one of the things, we've got a lot more security control than over Zoom. Our students have to use their logins to get into that. Our teachers have to use their logins, and it keeps outside visitors from being there. It's another step of safety that we're going to use, but we're going to use something called Google Meets to host virtual platforms. What else?
I would like to know more about how the first week of school would look like. We have a little more time to understand what happens in September.
Let me get there, okay? Let me talk. I'm going to get there. The question was about the first week of school. I'm going to tell everybody what to do the first day of school, all right? But we'll get there. What else, Ms. Browning? Anything about things we've already covered?
I think you just covered it, but is the bell schedule applied to online learners or just in person?
We're going to say this, and the general rule is yes. The question was about the bell schedule. Does it apply to all learners? The answer is yes. Now, I will talk about our learning model again in just a minute, but with our bell schedule, students, I'm going to recommend that every day that you check in with your teachers during your classes, you check in with teachers during your study hall. There are going to be times that within the framework of your schedule that you're going to be asked to take tests, to join class discussions. So yes, we are going to follow our bell schedule. There's some freedom in there, and we'll talk about our model a little bit, but athletics is still going to happen during 7th, 8th, and 9th periods. Band's going to still happen during 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. If you're in the choir, that's going to happen when choir happens. So students, get back and get used to using our bell schedule, all right? The other part of that I would tell parents, last spring, we'd have students working on assignments at 10 a.m., 2 in the morning, and then emailing teachers for help, for passwords to unlock things. And one of the things that I've really got to think about and that I want you to talk with your students about is when we get them back to school, we've got to rein everyone back in to a normal working environment for our faculty and staff, to a normal type of rotation of that 8-hour school day with our students, because I want to remind you that a lot of our teachers, we're going to give some teachers during their first weeks of school, some of them may have their own children at work with them. And so we need them to be able to take care of their families and things, and those are discussions you can have. I'll take one more question in this section.
What time students need to check in?
Okay, students check in. We'll get to times and everything. Our school day starts at 7:45. So students, I'm going to say, let's start checking in at 7:45 a.m. in your study hall. The first day of school, I want you to find your Google Classroom for your teacher study hall, and I want you to find them and email them. If you're an upper classroom and you got late arrival, hey, wake up late. But when you get up, find your first period teacher that you have class with and email them or get on their Google Classroom. That's what I want you to do on the first day of school. So let's get into some things, but before we get into our school model, this is where I want to tell parents that we are going to have to build a common language. There's been a lot of terms that are floating around there, like virtual, remote, and in-person, that not a lot of us understand. So I want to talk a little bit about things, and even one of my documents, I think I've confused some people, but first of all, if we ever use the term virtual, it means online learning. So I want to say this, down at the bottom I've got some takeaways. Here's some things that whether a person is learning in person or remotely, they can learn virtually, meaning a person at school can use their computer to learn online. A remote learner is one learning away from campus. Now, you're going to hear some of the terms, a lot of the terms, even I do it. Parents, if I use the term virtual and remote, sometimes I use those interchangeably, but let me correct what I mean. If I use the term remote, I mean 100% virtual. So if you choose your students to learn remotely or learn at home, they're going to learn 100% virtually. But I need you to know that in-person learners can and will learn virtually in our new plan. But the other thing is that our in-person learners, one of the big differences is if you send your kids to school, they're going to have daily access to teachers, all right? Daily access to every teacher. Your students, if they are learning at home, they are going to have daily access with teachers, but every day they might not have access with every teacher, okay? There are going to be opportunities for them to interact with teachers, but it may not be every teacher every day. And so that's one of the biggest differences that we're going to look at. But here's one thing that I'm going to say. No matter whether your kid is learning from home or your kid's learning in our building, parents, I want you to know that your kids are going to have access to our teachers. The next things that you need to know are these two terms, synchronous and asynchronous. Now, the state we'll give some state definitions of those, but we're going to talk about learning. Your kids are going to be learning synchronously this year, and they're also going to be learning asynchronously, okay? Synchronously means they are learning, students and teachers are learning live, in real time, together with each other. But with synchronous learning, one of the key things is that there's two-way communication going on with the student and teacher. Synchronous learning is not this. Synchronous learning is not kind of what's happening right now. I'm talking and you're listening. Now, I have made this presentation synchronous. How did I do that? I did that by using the chat feature. You were able to provide feedback with me in fairly real time. I don't have the YouTube feed pulled up here because I've got my presentation, but if I were a teacher, I could make this presentation either synchronous or asynchronous. Synchronous would be meaning there's a two-way exchange. This meeting would be asynchronous if I turned the chat feature off and all of you just had to sit and listen. So that's the big difference, but here's one thing. Both in-person and remote learners can learn both synchronously and asynchronously. So, and they will. You need to know that this year, and even under normal environments, your students reading a textbook or doing an assignment for homework, that's learning kind of asynchronously. They do the homework on their own time. So normal kids, whether they're at home or in person, learn both of these ways. But this year, I need you to know that we're going to have both of those things. The other things is that I said that kids, there's some language up here. Last year, the state, they said, TEA has stressed it, we must move from a model of providing instructional support to providing instruction. TEA, and we could describe last spring as we were shut down. We went into a pandemic. We've never done this before. The state's made it clear. We have got to move back to the business of getting to school and providing instruction. So this is one of the big things, and the state's making sure of this through their own framework. They are making new requirements on how our remote learners got I'll say this, we got 100% credit for every kid in attendance last spring. This spring, learners, to be counted present, if you're learning from home, you actually have to do things. And we'll talk about what those things are. But with some other things, but with this model, they have tied attendance and funding directly to what they want us to do and the models that we choose. So just know that. But the key takeaways here, I said it earlier, this year's going to be different. Our remote learners, if you're choosing to learn from home, I need you to understand, last spring, Kennedale ISD only required 2 lessons per week. You're going to have a return to possibly having 5 lessons a week, 5 days a week. 5 daily lessons, 5 expectations. So please know that. And then I said earlier, yes, TEA is requiring that we return to our grading guidelines. Let it be clear. Your GPAs will count. You will have grades taken. And that's about as clear as I can say it. So students, you're going to have deadlines. We'll talk about what those deadlines look like. Sometimes you're going to be required to be on person. But all of our learners, we need to start trying to fall back into that daily bell schedule. Now, let's talk about some of our learning options and some things, but I need to get in here. First of all, during the first 4 weeks of school, it's going to be different. First day of school is usually exciting. Parents do a lot of times, even at the high school, like to drop their kids off on that first day of school, and they show up to the door. We're not going to have that experience this year. We're starting, the KSD School Board has voted that we start the first 4 weeks virtually. Every student, every class throughout our 8 periods will be virtual, okay? Now, are there some extracurricular programs that might have practices after school and those kind of things? Absolutely. But for right now, in your 8 or 9 period day, all students are going to learn remotely. Now, I do need to note, I'm going to talk about the first 4 week period, but I got to be careful. Our school board actually has the option, and they're going to monitor things. If COVID numbers are still high in Tarrant and Dallas counties, they may choose to go an additional 4 weeks. They have that option with TEA. But after the 4 weeks, so we've got this initial 4 weeks, everybody learns remotely. That means off campus. They're learning 100% virtually. After that, we've kind of got some choices. Now, parents, I need you to be clear. When you make a choice, I need you to understand that the district sent out things that are for most students. For most students, they chose whether they want to learn 100% remotely or in person on campus, okay? But the fact is that at the high school level, there's a little third option. It's called hybrid. So here's what I want our parents to know. Things are not as black and white as they are for elementary students. We actually have some of our courses, not all of our courses can actually be offered at home. And TEA says, and we want our remote learners, they have the option to come to school for some of those classes. And that's the list that I sent you. And we're going to look at that list. But here's the thing. So the best example, the easiest example of that is, let's say that you want your kid to learn at home, but come up to school for athletics. You have the right to choose that. That would be a hybrid learner, okay? So that's not on your choice list, but that's one of the reasons the high school's meeting on Monday night tonight, because we need to talk to our parents about this fact. This is what makes our campus a little bit different and other high schools different than lower campuses, because we have this option, they don't. Junior high might have a couple of those choices also with athletics and band and some things, but below our 7th grade level, I don't know how much we're going to have. So Ms. Clark, I know, is here tonight watching, and I was thinking, wait, they've got band too. And so she'll talk about those with her campus. So anyway, you've got a choice, parents. This is the toughest choice you're going to make all year. And so you're sitting at home saying, Cagle, let's get to it. So here we go. After the first 4 weeks, so I'm going to talk about school in 2 phases. The first 4 weeks, everybody's remote. After that, you've got some choices, parents, and that's the choice that I'm going to help you make tonight. I told you before, and I hope that you have trust in me. I've been a principal here. This is now going into year 7 as a principal, year 8 as an administrator. I've got a very experienced team, all returning of APs that are over here today. But with all of those APs, I hope that you can trust, and you know us well enough, that we're going to take all the precautions that we can in our planning, and that your child's safety is one of the most important jobs and one that we've been thinking about for the last 5 months. And that's the trust factor that I'm going to have here. And I hope that you trust us as we're going to do those things. All right, so with that, parents, there's your 2 choices. You can be on campus, you can be remote or hybrid. Now, I've got some course lists that I've given you in that for your courses, I've listed them as in-person only, meaning we have some courses that we've listed as you have to come to campus to come to. Some that we offer, most of our courses we offer 100% virtually, and then there's a couple of others we'll call blended, where you can do, I'd say, most of your work at home, but you may need to come to school to participate or to access resources. Those are some phrases that I'm going to come back to. But let's talk about what school's going to look like. Whether you choose at-home learning or in-person learning, I want you to look at the learning experience. One of the first things that we have to do in our plans for education is we have to ensure that we provide as equitable an education as we can for both in-person and at-home learners. Now, one of the things I talk with teachers today is equitable does not exactly mean same. For instance, let me give you an example. The in-person learners are going to be around their teachers for 45 minutes every day if they're in person. I can't give that same experience to learners at home. But what the TEA says is, with our learners, we've got to provide equity in 5 areas. So these are the 5 areas. They've got to have equity with staff. Now, what does TEA mean by that? They've got this document, and I've actually copy-pasted there from a TEA PowerPoint, that they've got to have access. They've got to have access to the staff. They've got to be able to do things on large scales and small scales, and they've got to be able to have access to their teachers. We're going to ensure that. And we talked a little bit about a bell schedule and opening up more times in the day to have access to staff. And then they said that they've got to have a schedule that supports those things. They've got to have a schedule that supports small group intervention, support and intervention. We can do all these things in our our schedule. We can have time for our teachers to have more virtual office hours with that study hall. But we have looked at this and we tried to create an equitable situation as possible. And then our students also have to have some equity through curriculum delivery and progress monitoring. For instance, all of our students must have experiences with asynchronous and synchronous learning. So whether you're at school, whether you're at home, you've got to learn both ways. But let's talk about our model, the KISD model. The state gives schools 2 options. Option A was to choose a synchronous model, meaning it would be like having cameras in your classrooms and your kids would be at their computers for 9 periods a day, for 8 hours. We would have live cameras from all of our classrooms and we'd be streaming live all the time. That's very difficult. That's choice A, okay? Because some schools have tried that. They're having trouble with bandwidth, and parents are not liking that experience as much in the fact that their kids are on the computer for long periods of time with little break. And so we're going a different direction. We chose choice B in Kennedale. Now, please understand, we are choosing an asynchronous model for learning. But it doesn't mean, this does not mean the very first bullet, it doesn't mean like last fall, we're learning asynchronously all the time. The asynchronous model means that we are going to learn asynchronously, but we can require and must have synchronous opportunities for our students. So we are adopting a plan that says, okay, for a large portion of the time, our remote learners can learn asynchronously, not in step all the time with their teacher. And I'm so sorry, I'm coughing. But one thing you need to know is that in the asynchronous plan, it's best defined as an asynchronous plan that makes us guarantee or makes us provide every student with synchronous opportunities. That's important because remember, the state wants equity with staffing. They want equity with access to teachers. They want our teachers to be able to look at our definition for synchronous. They want us to be able to have interactions, two-way interactions, live interactions between students and teachers. So asynchronously does not mean we're learning asynchronously all the time. But this is what I want you to know in the new plan. So we're going to have students, with our students, regardless of whether you choose at-home learning or learning at school, all of our students are going to have some equity. They're all going to have the opportunities for these things. They're going to have asynchronous opportunities, synchronous opportunities, opportunities to learn virtually. So our in-person learners are going to learn through some of the same online platforms as kids at school or at home. And some of those kids at home are going to be able to come to school to have some of those in-person experiences as those. But this is what all of our students are going to have no matter that parent decision. Now, I do want to stress this, going back to equity. I said, is every student going to have the same access to teacher if I choose at home or not? No. It is not physically possible for our teachers, and we've talked with our teachers. We've told our teachers they're under a high amount of stress. Teachers, we know you can't be at school for 45 minutes with these kids and at home for 45 minutes with others. So I want to say that, but we do want to say this is, again, our teachers are working 8 hours at school plus some time to prepare each day. A lot of our teachers also work sports. Students try to stay within the best bell schedule you can. Miss Browning is bringing me something up. Got it. She's put me on a timer. They're saying, Cagle, speed it up. So looking at that learning experience, I will say this. So our learning experience for all of our learners is going to be similar whether you're at school or at home. Our students, one of the biggest things is we are going back to the Google platform. It did us very well. Students, you asked me, what was the first thing that I do on the first day of school? Log into Google Classroom. So how can you prepare before then? You can start getting and learning and checking your emails. Soon you're going to be enrolled in Google Classrooms. You can start checking your emails now. Parents, they are starting to receive their Google Classroom codes from their teachers in their emails starting this week. So students, if you want to be prepared for school, if you want to be ready, start getting to where you can check in with your teachers before that first day of school and get those codes. But with those Google Classroom codes, I've got this slide. We're going to collect all those. Teachers, my teachers are sending those codes to me right now. Parents, I'm going to promise you this. I'm going to get you that list before the first day of school. You'll know them. The kids know them. And down at the bottom, I have some questions about some of the trainings we're going to provide. We are going to provide Google trainings for parents. We want our parents to be able to navigate these things, and we also are going to provide our new-to-district students an opportunity to learn Google Classroom. But this is a screen that I want to talk about. So I said that with our asynchronous learning plan, a lot of times kids are going to be learning asynchronously, meaning they're going to be learning in their own time. But with that, they need to know, I said they have deadlines. We'll get to those deadlines. But under the new plan, under an asynchronous plan, we must provide every student the daily opportunity to interact with teachers. Now, a couple of things I did not say when I said that. I did not say that we must guarantee a learner at home have direct interaction or synchronous opportunities with each of his teachers or her teachers every day. There's a big difference. But what I want to say is that throughout the day, we've got to ensure that every learner is able to interact with one or more of his teachers on his schedule. That's what we have to do under this plan. But every day there have to be synchronous opportunities for two-way interaction for learners. So I want to say this, our learners at school are going to have daily opportunities to interact with teachers. They're there with them. This little chart is one that our teachers are going to look at and one our students are going to look at. We have got to remember with our teachers that they've got learners at home, learners in the classroom. I've got to realize that parents and students need a schedule. They need a routine. Our parents, as much as there's a lot of you that are under stress right now because you don't know what all this is going to look like, but we need schedules. We need normalcy. We need regularity. We have developed what we're going to use for the first 4 weeks of school and then beyond. This is a schedule that our students can expect. Mr. Cagle, what's the first week of school going to look like, was a question earlier. Well, this is what it's going to look like for everybody the first 4 weeks. The first 4 weeks, everyone is going to be a remote learner. So students, if you're at home, this is the schedule that your teachers are going to follow for providing synchronous opportunities. Okay? And I'll show some examples what a synchronous opportunity might look like. But I want you to remember the title of this slide says classroom. We've got other times when our teachers can interact with students outside of the classroom, right? We've got tutorials, we've got study hall, we've got those things. This is a schedule for our teachers to follow. Students ask, are we following the bell schedule? Yes, we are. And you need to follow the bell schedule because this is the schedule they are following for you. They are outlining, these are the days you'll see in red where our teachers are going to schedule synchronous opportunities for remote learners. Now, we look at this schedule. What do you notice about Monday? Monday, we're all synchronous all day in every class. And so my parents are going, well, wait a minute. You said we got to have daily opportunities for synchronous interaction. Well, this is where I want teachers or students to start checking in with their teachers. They've got all day Monday to check in through study hall. This is when our teachers are going to be available during those office hours. They're going to be available during your class period to do one-on-ones. But Monday is really a day. I think about our students. What are they going to do? They're going to wake up on Monday morning, and one of the first things that they've got to do is go to their Google Classroom and see what's posted for the week. And so we want to leave Monday a little bit flexible for students and for families and for our teachers as they are planning that week to get settled in, to go to all their classrooms, to get their agendas, to get their assignments. But we want them to have some time on that. So we've scheduled Monday as a synchronous day. And then for the other days of the week, by the way, I've looked at some different school districts. Some have done this by class period, some have done this by subject, but this is something similar that a lot of schools are doing because what this allows is that on different days, our teachers know that they can plan, these are synchronous activities for our learners. So they can say, okay, guys, if you're in my third period algebra class, we know that math is going to do synchronous on Tuesday, so I'm going to do a Google Meet session, and we're all going to meet up, and I'm going to check on your progress on Tuesday. Or they might have a lesson, a demonstration, but some kind of two-way interaction. This synchronous event for all you students, you may not know it yet, might be a live test that you take online and that the teachers monitor through GoGuardian. They might actually monitor you taking a live test, but synchronous learning opportunities. This helps our teachers divide their time. By the way, those learning opportunities don't have to be 45 minutes long. They can be 20 minutes long, 15 minutes long, 25 minutes long. But I've talked with our teachers, but the thing that this helps them do is plan for learners remotely, and then it helps them plan for their learners in the classroom. So this is one of the schedules and things that they can expect. We've broken up our schedule of synchronous and asynchronous by different groups. By the way, why did I put math science with CTE? Because some of our math and science courses are CTE. But students, that's what you need to know. You need to know this schedule because on those days, yes, you need to be able to follow the bell schedule. You need to be able to join your teachers synchronously and live during those class periods, okay? But the answer to the question, do I need to follow my bell schedule? Yes. But another reason we split this up is basically a student this time on days would normally they would have some required time to be there, but it's about half their schedule. And that's important. I said I've got some key considerations. Our student well-being is important so that they're not sitting in front of a screen 8 hours straight watching people. If they've got both synchronous and asynchronous segments, those asynchronous things they can do on their own time. And so that's why we've gone to this. Our kids do need regular scheduling. They do need some structure. They need to get back to the bell schedule, but they also need some time away to take their own breaks, to get away from the screen and do some of those things. But this is what our teachers and our students will follow. But in the Google Classrooms, I want you to know that by Monday of each week, and for our first day of school, it'll be Wednesday, but by Mondays of each week, our parents can expect that our teachers are going to post certain information. They're going to post what we call week-at-a-glance information and those synchronous learning opportunities, what they're going to do on those synchronous days on their schedules. But every day, every Monday when a kid wakes up, 7:45 we start school, check in with your study hall teacher, and then check your Google Classrooms. That's the way school will operate for the first 4 weeks. But I want to take a look down here. I said our teachers are going to post some of the things they might do, some possible synchronous opportunities. Again, those are interactive two-way things. They might be conversations. They might be a teacher providing feedback as a student writes. It might be small group conferences using Google Meets. It might be assessments. It might be a lecture like this with kids giving feedback on Google Meets. It might be YouTube Live, I don't know. But, ladies and gentlemen, that's some of the things that they will do on Tuesdays, Thursdays, if you're math, science, CTE, and then Wednesdays and Fridays if you are other departments. I've had this question come up with our teachers and with students, and I've given the TEA guidance here. Can teachers record their classes and put them online? Well, the answer to that is yes, they can, but they need to make sure that they don't violate FERPA. FERPA is the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. So I've got my answer here. We can use video conferencing. Students can see other students. We want to be careful. We don't want to give personal identifiable information too much in our recordings. But yes, they can record classes, and some of that I've encouraged. Now, I'll say again, if we broadcast live a classroom lesson, if our teachers do decide to stream their class and there's feedback, that's synchronous. If a teacher records a lesson and puts it online for a student to watch later, it then becomes asynchronous. Now, I said every day we've got to give synchronous opportunities. Our teachers are going to follow that schedule that I just went over in their classrooms, but we're going to hit some other areas. There are going to be other times students need to interact with their teachers, and I've got a list of a lot of ways that teachers can interact synchronously with their students. Could be a telephone call, an email happening in real time where there's a focus here. The state says focus has to be academic content and student progress. It can't be just an email about, hey, what's up, okay? But if our teachers and our students interact and have focus with academics and student progress, it's synchronous. So other things, our teachers, I said, are going to have more time for collaboration, planning, and meeting. We are going to require our teachers to have office hours. I will get our parents and students a list of those. We're compiling them now, about halfway through of getting the teachers' virtual office hours into a spreadsheet. That'll be done by the first day of school, parents, I promise. The next is the accessibility to teachers. Some other recommendations: connect during study hall. One thing you saw when you went back to our master calendar is that most of our teachers have that study hall during the PLC period. And the other thing, I'm telling our teachers at the end of every class period, save that last minutes for what I call flex time, for check-in from both at-home and in-person learners. But students, check in with your teachers the last 5 minutes. The other information we're collecting before or after school, no matter whether kids are in school or out of school, they're going to need help sometimes outside of the normal school day. We're still going to require tutorials. I've asked all teachers to do at least one before or after school tutorial and to make it available to both remote and in-person learners. I'm going to compile that list and get it to parents as well. All right. Other things teachers will be giving you are course syllabi with relevant information relating to the course. Now, this is where I'm going to get to the students. Students, I said that you're going to be learning both asynchronously and synchronously, meaning you're going to need to be with your teachers live sometimes. But a lot of your assignments are going to be due because we did adopt a largely asynchronous plan. You are going to have due dates. Now, I'll say this, if you have a synchronous lesson, you got to be there. But with a lot of your assignments, there are going to be due dates, and so you're going to have what the TEA says till the end of the day to get those in. Your due date time is not really exactly that class period, but really that same day. But you are going to have due dates. We are following the grading guidelines. Anything submitted after that time is going to be considered late, and you are subject to late penalties and zeros and all of those other things. So know that, but because you're working largely asynchronously, you will have a little bit of flexibility on turn-in times. But with that said, I'm going to jump right in, and I'll take questions in a minute. They're telling me I got to speed up with time. One of the big things is I said you're going to be held accountable, students. When I talk about attendance, when we talk about attendance, last year we kind of got a pass from the state and taking attendance. We marked you as engaged. Some of you were, some of you weren't. But this year, you actually have to be active. I've put the TEA guidance in the link at the top, but you can look on. There are 3 ways that you can be counted present if you're learning remotely. So these for parents, if you choose the remote option for your student, this is what they have to do, one of these 3 things, to be counted present every day. Now, I've got some of this. I'm going to skip over and get to these. I'm going to make this list simple. Kids, what do you have to do to be counted present? Okay? We're going to send a little flow chart to make this easier. The best way, the easiest way is if you get an assignment for a class, submit it. But you've got to submit assignments. I said you're held accountable even if it's by that 11 o'clock or that midnight time. But you've got to submit assignments. So every day, the state's going to be checking whether you submitted an assignment, whether you participated in 2-way interactions with teachers that are focused on academic content and monitoring student progress. One of the reasons we want you to check in with teachers every day is so they can check on your progress and we can get you counted present. That's one of the simplest ways that you can be counted present. Or the third way is if a teacher can monitor your progress or you show progress, you may turn in a quiz and not get anything, or you might get one right. But if we can show progress, we can be able to count you absent. So we'll talk more about those things a little bit clearly just with the sake of time. But the biggest thing is that the big bottom line down there in red is that, guys, I need you to submit assignments. I've had students even ask me, Mr. Cagle, I've got a job now. Do we have to go to school during the bell period? Yeah, guys, we're back in the business of school. Now, I know there's some flexibility here with our plan. You're still going to have required check-ins. On your synchronous days, your teachers may still require you be there for a test. But with that said, attendance is going to be strange. I'll talk about this year. Since our deadline for assignments is midnight, we actually have until the next day, really, and even longer in some cases, but till the next day, teachers will be going back, changing attendance. It's going to be one of our headaches, but students, if you get your work in, if you show up online, you're going to make it a lot easier on your teachers this year. All right. I'm going to get to this part, get it all in, get to a spot where I can take questions. I sent everybody a document called Student Learning Options. So parents, this is where you are. You know now what a little bit of school is going to look like, okay? We've chosen an asynchronous plan, but your kids are going to have to be there. We want them there during the bell schedule. So now we look at the choices that I sent you. I want to take a look. We looked at every course that we have on campus. I did miss archery on the list, by the way. Archery is considered a team sport, and I'll get there in a minute after talking with Mr. Wilcox. But when we looked at each course, one of the things that we wanted to do is we looked at the TEKS, the essential knowledge and skills, all the course requirements. We looked at different TA guidance and recommendations, like the guidance document I put above. We looked and saw, for instance, the TAs giving out specific guidance on UIL activities and CTE courses. They said if a lot of these courses, if they've got participation requirements like football, if you're going to be on the football team, you need to come to school. If you're going to be in choir, if it's UIL activity and it's got competition and performance, if it's got participation requirements, we can require those to be in person. I will say that in our band program, our band directors, a lot of schools have made that a requirement to be here. Our band directors have been kind enough. They are actually going to give, we know it is a marching season. We don't know how that's going to go, but they've given band kids, they know in the long term, we want as many kids in band as possible, so they've made that allowable to be here or virtually. But one of the other things, we had to ask 2 questions. This is in state guidance. Number 1, at home, do kids have the accessibility and availability to resources? We had a big question with art, and a lot of districts have had this same question. If kids are going to take art, do they have art supplies at home? Well, we're going to try to make things work for Art 1 and 2, but upper level art, we're going to ask that they come here. And then we had to look on this, we had to ultimately ask the question, can the coursework be reasonably completed only in person? And so that was the last question we had to ask. But when we got this list done, we basically came to all of these choices. So you're going to see this color-coded. Most of our classes are going to be just like they say, and this is where I use the word virtual. I should have used the word remote. They are available to our remote and in-person learners. Most of our classes are green. Then we have some classes where we say, you got to be here. A lot of these fall in those areas with team participation or our CTE practicums that actually have requirements to go out and get skills. And then we have some classes that we say are offered in blended model. Now, I can think of one of those like that, like yearbook. We might have yearbook where kids can do a lot of the work at home, but they might need to come to school to take pictures. They might need to cover an event. They might need to come get a camera. They might have to come to the school for access to some of those resources. So with some of the blended, some of the others, culinary, we might be able to teach virtually for a couple of days, but they might need to come up here to cook. Okay, so that's what we've seen. But I want you to remember with our blended in-person courses, our students need to know this is a required TEA. Notice that failure to complete those required on-campus assignments can result in zeros, it can result in failure, and it can result in not meeting attendance requirements for the state. So please know there are repercussions for not showing up. But I showed you our math, the only math class that we have that's either blended or we've only had everything in math we're going to make available. We are going to have a new course. We do have some new things this year. We have a new dual credit program, parents and students. We have a program through the University of Texas called On-Ramps. They are going to have to come to school to meet with Miss Hadaway. Once in a while, she'll announce those moments on the Google Classroom. Science, we had some big decisions to make here. We know that even in the TEKS that our kids need access to some of the equipment. Our science teachers are going to do their best to try to do virtual demonstrations and labs and then send kids some data to do analysis. But hopefully that we can offer all of our science classes virtually. And that's what we're going to try, including our new dual credit Physics 1 on-ramps. It will actually be all virtual with Mr. Griffin assisting the UT professors. English, we only have a couple. Yearbook I talked about was blended, and then debate is a performance category, and UIL category, we've marked that in person only. With social studies, they are all going to be offered online. Same thing with our languages other than English and a lot of our electives. But when we get to fine arts, when we get to PE, notice that there are lots of reds there. We have things like weightlifting, for instance. You need access to weights to weightlift. But one thing I'll tell anybody, if you're in an athletic period or you're in another like outdoor adventures or weightlifting that require in-person attendance, we do have a PE credit available virtually. So this is where I'm telling parents, look at your schedules, look at those things, try to get into courses where they can get those types of credit. So not all PE credits and athletics credits are virtual. We actually have one. It's a PE class that's done through our Edgenuity software. But take a look at that list. If you have any questions, you can email me. But as you get into some of these performance things and then CTE, like robotics, there's going to be times when they're going to need to come build the robots, be with equipment. So it's going to be blended. The practicum courses you'll see all over the place. They are going to be reds. They need actual hands-on practical experience. A lot of those came directly from recommendations of the state. But this is the page you kind of want to look at and reference. I took all of those and I've compiled on this slide, and in your packets you've got this list of blended or in person or just in person only. And so that's the courses you need to look for. So I'm going to go through some sample schedules. I put this here. So I've taken, this is an actual freshman student schedule. Let's say that their parents want to, I said the choice at the top, let's say that their parents want them to get virtually. So parents, you're looking at that schedule at home, and you look at this and you say, you know what? I just don't feel comfortable sending my kid to school. I want them to stay home. But they have athletics on their schedule, and it's required in person. This is one of the big personal decisions you're going to have to make. You're going to have to make the decision, you know, you do have the option to be hybrid. I said that's a unique one for us, but your student could actually stay at home, come for athletics, and then go back home. But you may not be able to do that, especially if they're a freshman. You're going to have to make a choice. So I've got some choices that you can have in the box. You could get this student schedule changed to have PE if you want them to stay home. You could look at this and you say, you know what? I'm sending them up there for athletics. They're going to have a lot of contact with kids anyway. Maybe it's just best that I send them to school. That's another option. Or you could, again, be virtual for all of those classes, come to school for athletics. That's allowed by TEA, and then go back home. I can't tell you what choice to make. I can only guide you and give you options at this point. This is the tough choice that parents are going to have to make. All right? And this is another example, same thing. This is an actual 10th grade schedule. So, by the way, yearbook here, I think I've got in person, I've got about 5 minutes. This person in yearbook, that should say blended. So I've got a typo on the screen, everybody. But go through the schedules. I've actually typed out some different ways that you can look at that in yours. For instance, there's the weightlifting example. They might just switch to PE, and then they could stay virtual if that's what you wanted. You know, if you've got things like theater too that are at the end of the schedule, and it's easier to come take a kid up to theater when needed, I'll say with courses like that, theater may go an entire 2 months of the first part of the school year and be all virtual. They may start then requiring you to come up to school closer to performance time. But I don't know. We're still hoping we can have theater performances. But parents, look at those schedules just for the sake of time. You know, one of the big ones is really going to be athletics. You're going to have to make some decisions. Our practicums in CDE. I want to remind you that if, for instance, culinary art, if you make a decision in a practicum that covers 2 periods, if you don't want this student attending or the student doesn't want to come to school, when they look at schedule changes, they've actually got to fill 2 holes, 2 periods. So, parents, ultimately, your students can be at home and learning remotely, but you might have to make some schedule changes, or you can send your kids to school, and our staff's going to take the best precautions and protocols that we can to keep them safe. Or thirdly, you can keep your kid at home most of the day and have them come to campus for those classes with required in-person attendance, either part or all of the time. Your student can either be remote, your student can be in person, or in Kennedale ISD, we are actually allowing the third option of hybrid students. But whatever that choice is, here's one thing. Kiddos, look at your schedules. If you need a schedule change, I've got a link here. You click on that link, it takes you through some questions. One of the best things to do is if you have a class, let's say 6th period, look 6th period first, look at that class period, look what you need replaced, and see if there's something you're interested in. That's an easy fix. You can do that through a form. If you see, well, you know what, maybe I just need a big change, or there's nothing in 6th period that I like, I need to talk with a counselor, you can do that as well. So on this form, you can indicate simple changes, or you can request to speak with counselors for more complicated changes. Do I have any questions? That's a lot.
Yes.
Okay.
What do you choose if you want them to be hybrid, since there are only 2 options due by end of month?
Well, here's the thing, students. Again, that's a great question. The question is, on the KHS commitment form, they don't have hybrid. So here's what the choice that you're going to make. If you're going to be hybrid, choose learning at home remotely, okay? Because that lets us know that your main thing is that you're going to be, I'm going to say if you got 9 classes, we know that 7 or 8 of them are going to be virtual, right? But still, you need to look at some things. You still need to look at your schedules. Maybe you've got 4 things on there and you need to change a couple of them because you can't go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But students, look at your schedules, make some decisions, but if you're going to be hybrid, mark learning at home. Good question. That's a good question. If I was a student, they get an extra bonus point. What else? Next question.
My junior will not have study hall and has counselor aide for second period. Will she need to check in with the counselor every day?
Good thing. Teachers' aides, office aides, counselor aides. Until we come back to school right now, yes, you are going to have Google Classrooms to check in with your teachers. We will put those on the Google Classroom code. Ms. Browning, will you mark down for me to remind teachers and office staff with those? But yes, that's a great question. If you have an office aide, teacher aide position, yeah, you're going to need to check in with your teachers. And those are still elective offerings. Yes, that's a great question.
If my student is doing hybrid, how much time do they have to, say, be online second period and then get to school for in-person third period?
That's a great question. Anybody that's going to have to come from home to campus and then back. The question was, how long does it take? That depends on where you live and how slowly you drive through school lanes. But that's a good question. I talked with our teachers, and I talked about those asynchronous opportunities and things we're doing, or synchronous opportunities. I talked about the things that we're doing with kids. But one of the things I said is sometimes put those synchronous opportunities in the middle of class periods, because we do have some kids going back and forth and being transported to and from school. So they're going to need a little transition time if they want to get back and learn online. But here's one thing I say. The question was, how long does it take to get to school and back? I don't know, because I don't know where everybody lives. I know Kennedale ISD is not that big, so I'd say most people could get here in 10 minutes, most back in 10 minutes or less. Is that about accurate?
We have a couple of questions that's asking about, like,
Okay.
Will extracurricular activities be on campus, I guess, while students are online, like athletics or cheer?
Okay. Yeah, we are right now, any of our extracurricular activities, the question was, are they on campus? Absolutely. We have got guidance from TEA. Now, I'll say this, a lot of extra out of hours things right now. They are allowed to have some workouts. They are doing summer workouts. I know that we're going to have a cheerleading parent meeting that I'm going to send some information to. The bass fishing team met out in front of the school today. But you may have to meet outside. You might have to practice outside. But in some things, bands practicing outside and in some large socially distant spaces. But we've got things going on, guys, and we are gearing up for school. It's good to hear the drum line and the noise of school.
Asked about clubs. What about clubs?
We're going to have clubs too. If I've got any students out there that are still logged on and all those things, get with your sponsors, guys. You guys are going to use Google Meets to hold meetings. You might have to have virtual meetings, just like our leadership's going to host Fish Camp virtually. I'm going to just recommend you do the same. That's how I've been having faculty meetings for the last 5 months. But for sure, virtual meetings, but you guys can start organizing those and getting with your sponsors, recruiting new members. Absolutely.
Okay, we'll make this the last question. Are students required to wear masks when at school?
Okay, so this is the question, and we have this, and I kind of knew this one was coming, is masks. Okay, that's a hot topic in our community. I recognize that our students have a petition for masks. I recognize that in our initial district blueprint, that our district has not required masks in our classroom. That blueprint has required masks in other parts of our building where our students will not be as socially distant, like hallways and some things. To answer the question right now, that's what the district guidance says. To answer the question, Mr. Cagle, I am strongly in favor of wearing masks personally for employee protection. I'm strongly in favor of our students wearing them. So students right now, I'll say this, if we want to be an active student body and we want to have active leadership amongst our students, I think I'm going to encourage that each of you wear that, and we show up to school, all the in-person learners, and we wear masks in the classroom. And so that's what I encourage you to do. That's what's been recommended. But with the district policy right now, I understand some of the reasons that was drafted as well in the way that it is. But students, I'm just going to say I'm going to highly encourage you wear a mask in the classroom, and that's what we'll do, and that's what we're going to do if we all agree upon it at Kennedale High School. Students, bring your mask. We'll put them on, and we'll go to school. And I hope that answers everybody's question. If that question was, Mr. Cagle, will you have a campus policy right now that overrides district policy? I don't think that I can do that in any way, shape, or form. But I will certainly be supportive of all of our safety efforts. And I said I'm going to do whatever it takes to protect our students. And if that requires me to encourage all of our students to wear a mask, that's what I'm going to do. And we're going to take the safest route possible. I hope that answered our questions. Anybody else? What else we got? Was that the last one? Okay. I'm 4 minutes over, parents and students. We're going to end this meeting. Our APs will be back next Monday. Have a great day.